Hi, all, and welcome to Conflict Transformation Training. Get started in just 1 second. Thank you all for joining this session of We the World's 11 Days of Global Unity. My name is Callum, and I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the Human Rights Coordinator here at We the World. A physical description of myself: I'm white with a beard. I have short above ear brown hair. I have navy blue glasses on. I'm wearing a navy button-down shirt that has lighter blue dots on it. Behind me, you can see a light blue wall, a shelving, a lamp, and some photos of the outdoors hung up. To begin, I want to open this session with a land acknowledgement. This event is being streamed from northern New Jersey, the seized and current lands of the Munsee Lenape. I would like to acknowledge their ancestors who were removed by colonialism to Oklahoma, Ohio, and Canada. Today, the Munsee Lenape live both on the lands to which they were removed and their homelands that encompass eastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, southern New York State, and New York City. The Lenape Nation signed the first treaty between Native Americans and settlers in 1778. 244 years later, we have the responsibility to uphold this and all treaties. As someone on this land, I plan to uplift the Munsee Three Sisters Farm that promotes food sovereignty and justice as a way to heal and rebuild Indigenous community. I encourage you to learn about the Indigenous land you reside on in an action you may take to uphold treaties in your location. We will tackle today's training in 4 parts: an introduction, learning frameworks, dissecting conflicts, and methods for conflict transformation. I encourage you to take something out to write with for notes, as we're going to have an interactive exercise we're going to do together. You also need some notes on the concepts we explained today in order to answer our final exercise. So I'm going to give everyone a second to do that. Awesome. I wanted to find some terms you might have heard in regards to conflict, and that are used often interchangeably, but do have different meanings. Conflict management is the ability to identify and deal with conflicts. Conflict resolution is finding a solution for a current conflict. Conflict prevention is taking steps to prevent conflicts. And conflict transformation is working to improve relationships and address structural changes to avoid conflicts. This last concept, conflict transformation, is the focus of today's training. 2 more definitions. Power with occurs through interactions with others and is built on respectful and empowering relationships. Power over is rooted in dominance and superiority. American society has developed through power over, and due to our individualistic culture, we prioritize individual needs, attitudes, and preferences instead of that of the greater whole. This plays a major role in how we currently approach conflicts. Understanding how to approach conflict through the lens of empathy and curiosity is integral to transformation. So now that we have some definitions down, we're going to do an exercise. I will read the conflict prompt and give everyone 5 minutes to write a response based on how you would approach a conflict with your current knowledge of conflict engagement. There are no wrong answers to this prompt. We will return to this exercise and your answer at the end of this training. The prompt is also on the screen if you'd like to follow along, but our prompt reads: you're at a dinner table and you begin talking about students heading back to school for the fall. You mention your excitement for sports season to begin again, which causes your conversation partner, person A, to bring up anti-transgender laws regarding youth sports. Person A states that they are for a ban against they are for a ban against transgender students playing on teams, as it puts cis women at a disadvantage and will ruin all the hard work they put into their sport. They follow up by stating that this could also affect college scholarships for cis women. You respond by saying, "So take 5 minutes to write down your answer before we move on." If you're just joining us, we're doing an exercise right now. The goal is the prompt on the screen, to read that and answer it and how you would answer person A based on how you currently engage in conflicts. We have about 4 minutes left for people to write down their ideas. Okay. Let's start wrapping up. And wow, people are wrapping up their thoughts. I forgot to hit record at the beginning. Something we do to that. So apologies if you hear the lady voice yell at you. There we go. Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to talk about some conflict frameworks. Our first conflict framework comes from the Better Arguments Project, which was created so that people may debate important ideals while staying constructive. Their method is twofold: context broken down into 3 dimensions, and personal actions through 5 principles. The first dimension is history. Cultural history and lived experiences are a major aspect that drives our values. We must work to learn and understand the history that informs today's debates and ground their claims in claims using historical context. History informs current reality, and both largely form based on one's identities and cultures. Someone who's a white male will have a different history and current reality than a Black woman. History is intergenerational and intersectional. The second dimension is emotion. Emotional intelligence is an individual's ability to identify and manage their emotions. The emotions have the ability to affect how you present yourself. In conflicts, it is also important to understand how and why other participants are, quote unquote, taking a certain stance. Through this, we can engage in what is engaged in calling people in instead of calling them out, and challenging or diminishing each other's emotions. For those who don't know, calling in is an alternative to calling out. Calling in invites participants to engage and reflect on harmful or misinformed comments. Calling out, on the other hand, brings robust attention to those comments and can be seen as an attack. And the third dimension is power. Power in American culture is rooted in dominance and superiority, as we mentioned before. We must acknowledge power and how it impacts conflict dynamics. Participants do not tend to enter conflicts on equal footing, as there are power imbalances. These inherited inequalities need to be named. This is why I share the definition of power with. Power with originates through interactions with others and is built on respectful and empowering relationships. And this can help transform conflicts. Now we're going to discuss 5 personal actions you can take to transform your conflicts. First, take winning off the table. To transform conflicts, we need to enter with the goal of understanding and learning. Prioritize understanding another person's view. Second, prioritize relationships and listen passionately. Focus on building honest connections. If we do not care to listen, then a better argument cannot happen. Relationships should be valued more than the outcome of the conflict. Pay attention to context. As we spoke about under the history dimension, values and beliefs come from various aspects of one's life. Understand why a person holds their beliefs. Fourth, embrace vulnerability. Arguments mean making yourself vulnerable. Vulnerability is not a weakness and can allow us to grow in our experiences, values, and relationships. Make room for transformation. We're working towards the goals of learning, understanding, and building community instead of winning. Embrace the emotions related to your transformation. Another framework for understanding context and other perspectives is the Craybill Conflict Style Inventory. The inventory details different styles individuals use for responding to conflict. These are then described based on their priority to one's own agenda and on their relationship. The first one is directing, which is an I win, you lose situation. It has a high focus on one's own agenda with a low focus on the relationship. Avoiding is I lose, you lose. Low focus on one's own agenda and a low focus on the relationship. Cooperating is a high focus on one's own agenda and a high focus on the relationship, a win-win situation. Harmonizing is low focus on one's own agenda and high focus on relationship. I lose and you win. And compromising, medium focus on own agenda and a medium focus on the relationship. I win some, you lose some. Now I want to give you some questions to think about regarding the inventory and give you 5 minutes to jot down your thoughts. First, what style do you currently tend to engage in to respond to conflicts? What style is best for doing the work we do in human rights? Is the best style to use unique to each conflict? What style do you think would be useful to respond to our exercise that we did at the start? How would you respond to someone who is coming into a conflict with one of these styles? Think about this specific question for each of the 5 styles. And let me go back to each of those screens. I will be on each screen for about 2.5 minutes of the 5 minutes so that people can see and remember. So let's start those 5 minutes. For those who might just be joining us, we're doing a quick exercise. We just went over Kraybill conflict style inventory, which is 5 styles of how people might show up to conflict. We're answering the following questions. Which style do you currently tend to engage in response to conflict? What style is best for the work we are doing in human rights? Is the best style to use unique to each conflict? What style do you think would be best? Pardon me. What style do you think would be useful to respond to our exercise we did at the beginning? And how would you respond to someone who is coming into a conflict with one of these styles? And think about that last question for each of the 5 styles. And I'll go back once again to the first 3. About 2 more minutes for you to write down your thoughts. All right. I hope those questions made you think a little bit. Now let's get into some theory. So let's talk about how a theory can give us some insight into how our socialization affects our willingness to engage in transformation. Mary Douglas, a British symbolic anthropologist, engaged with the ideas of boxes and boundaries. Her theory can be one way for us to understand context and transformation. We were taught from a very young age to put things in boxes. For example, girls, boys. When an individual adheres to these boundaries, they are met with positive feedback. However, when a child disregards the reality of the boxes, they are met with negative feedback. I'd like to quickly note that feedback in this way doesn't always have to be verbal. Positive feedback could be something like a smile, and negative feedback could be getting something like the cold shoulder. A large amount of our lives, even in adulthood, is dedicated to learning these boxes and boundaries. Devoting such a major portion of your time to getting these boundaries right and avoiding negative feedback causes one to want to maintain these boundaries to the hard work. Think of it in the same way as someone who might have spent a few weeks creating a piece of art. They'd want to maintain that piece after all that effort. Boxes and boundaries are unknowingly intertwined with our emotions. So when someone tries to oppose another's boxes and boundaries, they are typically met with an emotional response. Regardless of intensity, negative reactions are generally traumatic in some way. Unlearning and examining your boxes and boundaries means you will likely need to re-endure negative feedback. The fear of shifting one's views and knowing they will be met with negative feedback, in addition to having quote unquote wasted so much time learning their current views, creates a resistance to change. This all occurs subconsciously, meaning that individuals do not know that they are working from frameworks or that they're for their current views, nor their reason for resisting change. We must understand that to many, boxes and boundaries are nothing more than just their personal views on the topic. Now we're going to move into dissecting the conflict. So we have discussed conflict frameworks. Now let's begin looking at how we can dissect conflicts to better understand and transform our responses. Remember to utilize the frameworks we learned for these methods. So framing an issue can be a useful method. Begin by asking yourself these questions. What is the issue? And what happened? Who was involved? What were you thinking at the time? Who was hurt? How were they hurt? What can you take responsibility for? What contributes to the problem? Think history, lived experiences, boxes and boundaries, etc. And what contributes to the solution? Think about solutions that are currently being used, forward-thinking solutions, and creative solutions. Consider what if there isn't a possible solution, and what's next? Research has found that problem solving as a response to conflict has been effective in 59% of cases. Interest-based problem solving is a technique we can use during conflicts. To do this, you first separate the person from the problem. By this, I mean what they did was bad, not that they are a bad person. Second, focus on interest instead of position. And third, develop options for mutual gain. When engaging in interest-based problem solving, I encourage you to try to engage on common ground and common values. You may need to think more broadly to find a common value, but examples of this could be wanting a safe planet for our children. Both parties may be able to agree on this and begin talking about the interests and problems that cause an unsafe planet, even if those reasons don't exactly match. This may lead to outcomes that benefit both parties. So, how can you start figuring out your personal interests, but also the personal interest of the other parties? These are some actions that you can engage in to start working on this. First, when working to decipher your own and others' interest, you can self reflect. Think, what is bringing you to this situation? What interests do you have? What emotions are you feeling? And what are your goals for the situation? Excuse me. Uh, Engage in role reversal. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Self-educate on the topic from relevant information from pardon me, on relevant information from diverse sources. Be transparent. Allow your interests to be known. This includes interests, positions, hopes, etc. Engage in questions that lead you to know the other participants' goals, needs, and hopes. And think about, how does the other participant see your interests, goals, and needs? Now we are gonna get to conflict transformation methods. So this is the action part of this training. You now have frameworks and a way to dissect conflicts, but what are you going to do once you're actively engaging in a conflict? Words are powerful, and shifting our language can truly change the outcomes of a conflict. Some examples are using and instead of but. Know that there are multiple stories and perspectives, and understand that multiple stories and perspectives are valid. Approach conflict with curiosity. Again, like we talked about before, conflict is a way to learn and grow in our own experiences. Understand the problem, don't just try to fix it. If you're just trying to fix it, it's more like slapping a band-aid on the problem. And it's likely to come up again. When we talk about understand the problem, we're going to go back to those frameworks we learned earlier with the first dimension of history. So understand the context. What has caused this problem to happen? Fight the problem, not each other. Again, figure out the problem is and work to deconstruct it. And lastly, everyone creates harm, not just bad people. And that includes all of us here tonight. We mess up, we do things that are harmful. Does not mean we are a bad person. And that goes back to other ideas about separating the person from the problem. So you've restructured your language and now you're ready to change your actions. A very powerful way, in my own opinion, to transform conflicts is to always try to use I statements. When someone uses you statements, you probably have experienced this many times in your life. It can kind of feel like it's coming out as an attack. So saying, I feel that what you said was harmful to the community, instead of saying what you said was harmful to the community. It can make it sound like you're accusing them of something, you're accusing that they're a bad person. And again, going back to that last point we just had, knowing that, yes, everyone harms, and it's not just bad people. And just because someone does something bad, it does not mean they are a bad person. Additionally, you can engage in active listening. This is being fully present. You're paying attention, withholding judgment, be open, and care for other people. So within that, care is caring for what the person is saying. You actually want to hear what they're saying and hear where that perspective's coming from. Reflective listening, give the participants the ability to hear their own thoughts back and clarify themselves. You might say, what I'm hearing you say is, and again, just like it said, it kind of lets them clarify themselves. there is a chance that what they were trying to say did not come out correctly, or really the way they wanted to, or just how you understood it is not what they meant. So that lets them clarify themselves and what they were actually trying to get across, um, in a way that doesn't escalate the conflict. You can use resonance, which is connecting to other people without giving your own opinion. So showing connection or appreciation felt by what the other participant said without adding a why you felt like that. So do's and don'ts. Do not use this time to give advice. Don't use the time to ask questions, and don't bring up your own experience. Do use the person's exact words. If you can't quite remember their exact words, try to get as close as possible. So some phrasing examples here are, I felt really connected to you when, or I appreciated when you said. And we are going to do our closing exercise now. As I mentioned earlier, we are now returning to our starting exercise. I want you to re-answer this prompt using what you learned today. This means the frameworks, how to dissect a conflict, and methods of transformation. I'm going to read the prompt again and then give you 5 minutes to re-answer it. We're going to then come back with both your answers and look at some thoughtful questions. So for this, I'm going to read the prompt, and I want you to utilize different things from today, like using I statements, understanding the context, using and instead of but, looking at your own emotions coming in and how that's showing up, and putting those into your answers. So our prompt reads, you're at a dinner party and you begin talking about students heading back to school for the fall. You mention your excitement for sports season and begin again, which causes your conversation partner, person A, to bring up anti-transgender laws regarding youth sports. Person A states that they are for a ban against transgender students playing on teams, as it puts cis women at a disadvantage and will ruin all the hard work they put into their sport. They follow up by stating that this could also affect college scholarships for cis women. You respond by saying, take 5 minutes, re-answer it, and use some of those frameworks and methods you just learned. And while everyone's working through this exercise, let me go back through some of the slides to refresh your memory, in case you weren't able to take notes. So remembering our dimensions of history, emotions, and power, our actions of taking winning off the table, prioritizing relationships and listening passionately, paying attention to context, embracing vulnerability and making room for transformation. The 5 styles of responding to conflict: directing, avoiding, cooperating, harmonizing, compromising. The theory by British anthropologists about why people might struggle to change. Framing the issue. This might be very good for this exercise. Think about, what is the issue, who's involved, what contributes to the problem, and what contributes to the solution. Interest-based problem solving, separating the person from their problem, focusing on interest instead of positions, and developing options for mutual gain. Shifting your language to things like using and instead of but, understanding the problem and fighting the problem instead of just trying to fix it and fighting each other. Remembering that everyone creates harm, not just bad people. Use I statements. Use reflective listening. I'm now realizing I missed some of this slide. I will go over this while people are taking notes. But there's a concept called oops and ouch. When someone says something that causes harm or makes someone uncomfortable, the person or persons feeling the impact may say or type ouch, and the offender says oops, and the conversation stops to resolve the matter. Take accountability for your actions. Understand that conflict is a chance to grow and learn, which I think is the biggest takeaway for today. Consider intent versus impact. Although your intent was not meant to be harmful, the impact was, and that needs to be acknowledged. Using definitive questions, so yes or no questions only. And take a break, letting all parties sit with their thoughts. We got about a minute left for everyone to work on re-answering this exercise. Okay. So as I mentioned, we are going to do some questions that relate to the exercises. So I want everyone to write down their thoughts to the following questions. I'll give everyone another 5 minutes to do this. First, what changes do you see from the first round in your current answer? Why did you make the changes you did the second time you answered? What about your first answer made it not the best answer for conflict transformation? What lessons from this training did you incorporate into your new answer? For example, maybe you incorporated I statements, or you added reflective listening to your response. So those are the 3 questions for right now. I can read them one more time, but everyone can also start writing. I'll start the timer for 5 minutes. The first question is, what changes do you see from the first round in your answer? Second, why did you make the changes you did to this? Pardon me. Why did you make the changes you did the second time you answered? What about your first answer made it not the best for conflict transformation? What lessons from this training did you incorporate into your new answer? For example, you incorporated I statements, or maybe you added reflective listening to your response. So, about 4.5 minutes, maybe a little less, to answer those questions. About one more minute to answer the 3 questions. And if you are done writing, and you have any questions about this training, conflict transformation, anything we went over tonight, please feel free to put it in the chat and I'll do my best to answer it. All right. And with that, we're at the end of our training. I want to thank you for joining me today to learn how to create transformative and productive conflicts. If you're watching this recording, thank you for watching it and putting in the effort to learn how to create transformative and productive conflicts. I want to give a major thank you to the Stoke Collective and the Better Arguments Project for their wonderful resources that were used to help to create this training. I strongly encourage you to check them both out. And as you might know, today is day 8 of 11 of We the World's 11 Days of Global Unity. It is a human rights theme. We have another event tonight titled The Colonization and the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Epidemic, How Federal Land Acquisition Caused a 500-year-long epidemic, happening at 6 p.m. Eastern on this same Zoom line and live on facebook.com/the We Campaign. You can also see the rest of our events that go until the 21st at 11daysofglobalunity.org. That is numerical 11, not spelled out. So I want to say thank you all and have a good rest of your day.